Hi, this is Anna Bevan Gravely with NCFREE, and I am joined by EC Sykes, running for Secretary of State. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you'd like to share with our members before we get started?
Well, Anna Bevan, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Yeah, I think let's just start with a little bit of background about myself before we jump into some of the business aspects. I'm a Durham native. Actually, I'm a 10th generation North Carolinian, the first generation not raised on the farm. North Carolina State graduate, where I met my beautiful wife of 34 years. We have 2 children and we have 3 grandchildren. This is the first time that we've stepped into the political arena. It's been a great race. Learned a lot during the process and met a lot of great people.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks so much, and congratulations on being married for that long. My parents are 33 years married, so you've got one on them. We'll go ahead and get started.
I got a very patient.
Yes. Have you ever owned a business or been in a management position within a business?
And yes, I have. I'm currently the general partner for a business that I started in the commercial real estate business, started about 5 years ago in 2015, where we invest solely in the Research Triangle Park area. I bring in capital from inside and outside, about half of it from outside of North Carolina, and invest in this market. But after my engineering degree, eventually I moved more and more into management. I had the CEO role in a small manufacturing company north of Wake Forest in Youngsville, and was able to grow it to be one of the fastest 50 growing companies in North Carolina. And the owners sold it to a Fortune 500, and I got to go be on the executive team for that Fortune 500. Eventually managing $4 billion, managing operations in 20 countries and 35,000 people. And then I was CEO of an LED lighting company as well, a venture funded company. And I was CEO of a NASDAQ traded public IT company, global company on that side. So 3 CEO roles and an executive officer of the Fortune 500 and a small business owner and president.
Awesome, thank you. Would you say that the current level of state and federal taxation is too high, too low, or just about right?
Yeah. I mean, it's an issue for our competitiveness. And so as those tax rates continue to increase, it just incentivize companies to think about how they do business elsewhere. At the same token, I think we probably have more of an issue with our spending than anything else. So if we can bring our spending levels down, I think we can bring our tax levels down. And so I'm a big proponent of a smaller government size and reduce spending levels. That will enable us to bring our spending down. I mean, right now we got an issue where we're spending more than we're bringing in. And so that's got to get fixed first. And I think we can do that with a smaller government.
Yeah. Do you feel it is appropriate for state or local governments to offer incentives to private businesses in consideration of locating, expanding, or conducting business in a particular part of the state?
I've taken advantage of those, not only in North Carolina and in the US, but internationally as well. So we've done them in South Asia and in Europe, where that incentive packages are a common practice. Some people do it much, much better than others. But look, at the end of the day, you offer an incentive package because an alternative location has an advantage over the solution that you are offering. And so you use money to offset whatever advantage that the other site is offering. I think the first thing we want to do is to give ourselves an intrinsic competitive advantage so that people want to come to North Carolina or expand their businesses in North Carolina without having to get financial incentives. We've got the ability to do that. We've got a lot of great things to offer here between our education system, the level of trained employees that are here, our infrastructure is fantastic. Let's focus on those, and so we can pull back on the incentive program. They're necessary from time to time. They're smart from time to time, but it's easy, I think, to buy the business, particularly for a politician that wants a win in their pocket and maybe more interested in the win than they are about the long-term business impacts of the tax of giving away the money.
Describe your personal opinion as to what the key principles of free enterprise are.
Yeah, those are really important to me because, as from running a company and operating on a global basis, excuse me, you get a chance to see what happens when people, don't operate under those principles. And I've come to understand and respect there's really four basic fundamentals that have to be evidenced in order to have a free enterprise. And I think as you move away from those, then you start to get into complications, just get into more controlled systems. So real quickly, those four to be thinking about. The ones that pay attention to me is the first is, you need to be free to try. If you want to start a company, you need to have the ability to be able to start without barriers of entry that restrict people's ability to try. In some ways, we see those barriers of entry as just like the licensing process, for instance. And so you can create a licensing process that makes it difficult for people to want to enter a certain type of business. And there's other restrictions that are artificially put in that causes difficulty in a free enterprise system. The second thing is you need to be able to free to sell, right? If you got restrictions on the markets that you can serve, if you can't sell your commodities freely in a market that's out there, then you don't have a system that self-regulates as it should. And so we need to make sure there's not restrictives in the markets that a person can sell in. And so monopolies and other structures would cause that. The third thing is free to buy, right? And so you don't, rationing, the restricted access to goods, restrict the free flow of commerce that's there. And anytime you go to restrict that free flow of commerce, you've impacted the free enterprise system. And the final one is free to fail. If companies are too big to fail, they don't feel the competitive pressure that they need to feel in order to continue to get better, right? Companies naturally start getting lazy at that point. Inefficiencies come in to play. And so I think they need to be able to feel the pressure of the markets, pushing them to get better and what the consequences are if they're not operating at their best. So those four real quick rehashes: free to try, free to sell, free to buy, and free to fail. That's not a perfect system. And there's reasons that we need to put some regulations around them from time to time to protect people against fraud and other things that may occur that's there. But the general principles there, I think we've rotated too far on restrictions. And so if we would let these principles, I think, flow a little better, we would, consumers would benefit.
Yeah. And this next question is still pretty timely in our conversation of living in a global pandemic and trying to figure out solutions to our problems. And I think this will be the reality for a bit longer and moving into 2021. But in your opinion, what is the appropriate balance in the scope of federal and state regulatory requirements on business? And what, in your opinion, is the best way to balance the appropriate protections without impugning economic vitality?
Yeah, and that goes back a little bit to the prior question. We talk about what is free enterprise. So, I think the evidence in history points to the fact that the system itself, the free enterprise system, is the closest we have to a self-regulating system. Now, it's not perfect, but it's a whole lot better than a central controlled system and the difficulties and the problems that history teaches that comes along with those systems. And so you need some level of regulation, but a free system in itself also has some corruption, and it has some, unfortunately, some things that, fraud and other things that happen that you need to protect from. So always the real question of the day is, where's that balance? If you're not going to go to one extreme or the other, where do you end up on that continuum of where it should be? I think we're clearly in a time at present that we've rotated to too much control. Right? We have over-regulated companies to an excess, which creates burdens on them, cost structure burdens, which makes it more difficult to go into business or to be profitable. But in the course of that, there's various entries that is caused by that as well. And so the economic system ends up suffering, and the real person that suffers at the end of that is the consumer, right? If all these burdens have to get passed through to the consumer at some point. And so if we can pull these back, if we can relieve some of these pressures that are there, we get to have a more competitive, globally more competitive system than the one that we have now. So I'm a big fan of let's pull back a little bit, not all the way, but we've rotated too far into the control side.
So if elected, what would be your top 3 priorities as it pertains to the business community?
This is an office that supports and drives economic growth. And so so my heart's particularly driven that way. And that's the reason I want to pursue this particular office. I've had the success in the past of growing companies and growing them quickly, whether it's the first one I mentioned from 2 million to 15 million, or the last one I mentioned, which was from 600 million to 4 billion. We've had the opportunity to grow companies. Here in North Carolina, look, 75 to 80% of our employment is driven by small businesses, right? And so as we think about future economic prosperity in the state, that's naturally a lot of it's going to be driven by the small business owners. We need to incentivize those people to be able to, or make it easy for that group of people, entrepreneurs, to be able to start their businesses. So in this office, there's an opportunity to streamline that process. There's some red tape, there's some difficulties in the process of starting businesses here that are artificial. They don't need to exist to protect consumers over there. The second thing is the cost of doing business. North Carolina ranks number 34 in the nation of the cost of doing business. And so we should be in the most competitive section, not the top, worst half. And so we need to thinking about what is it in our system that we can take out that makes it less expensive to do business here. And a large part of that actually happens to be the cost of insurance in North Carolina, where the commercial insurance costs, we rank number 50 out of 51, the District of Columbia. So we got some room to go in that side, and that needs our attention, right? So we can create a better business environment. And then finally, what I'm most excited about is this office is under-scoped what it can do. It should be the office that sets the economic vision and the strategic actions for North Carolina. And so as a prior business executive in a couple of different fields, I think we've got a great opportunity in North Carolina. We can align our resources toward a vision, right? As to what we want our state to be known for, what our brand is. So we can create some strategic value going forward to be great in certain areas, don't necessarily have to be great in all. And one of those that first comes to mind for me is the pharmaceutical market. Look, we learned from COVID that there are some foreign countries that have control over that supply chain that maybe are not thinking about our best interest. And there's been some commitments made to bring that back on shore. And North Carolina's abilities puts us in a great spot to get more than our fair share of that business. And so let's think about what do we need to do to be proactive, to go out and grab it and bring it in, as opposed to waiting it to come to us. And so strategic vision that's here, I think common sense business practices that's here to streamline our processes and then to make it easier for entrepreneurs to start their businesses in North Carolina.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and share with our members a little bit about you and your passions. So where can our members go to learn more about you?
Yeah, our website is ecfornc.com. So it's ecfornc.com. And on there, you'll see on the right side, there's a little bio there. At the bottom, actually, is a longer PDF. And it'll give you more of my business background that we gave you a highlight here, as well as some of the other reasons that we're interested in running for this office. So thank you to you and for your viewers for taking the time to learn a little bit more about what we can do in our Secretary of State's office.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much and have a great rest of the day and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you, Eva. Annabella.